Welcome to episode 4. Today we're going to talk about navigating change and uncertainty with confidence. Hello and welcome back to Life, Joy, Power. I'm your host, Natalie Day. I am a mother of 4, fitness enthusiast, teacher, and coach. In our last episode, we talked about building resilience to tackle life's challenges. Today, we're going to be diving into something that touches us all, how to handle change and uncertainty with confidence. So change is one thing, which happens every day, all the time, stuff that we are not planning on, stuff that we're even planning on, but add the element of uncertainty and it often can feel very overwhelming. So whether you're waiting on news about a job, navigating a family health issue, or dealing with unexpected life shifts, uncertainty can test us in ways we've never imagined. But here's the good news. It can also teach us powerful lessons about trust, flexibility, and growth. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the nature of uncertainty. So let's talk about acknowledging first. I think this is powerful to acknowledge that uncertainty is part of life. And once we acknowledge that and give it a name, sometimes that gives it power to that so that we can move forward. So we can't control everything, unfortunately. I know sometimes it would be so nice if we could control. I think even to as your parent, it'd be nice if we could just make them make the choices that we wanted them to make. But that's okay. It's natural to feel anxious or unsettled when life feels unpredictable. But uncertainty isn't just about something to survive. It is something that we can use to thrive. So, and so I think about all these different changes. Some of the changes I've thought about, and some of them were expected. It's right, all my kids have been born in different states. And so with that, kind of always that change always brought some uncertainty. You didn't know the places we were going. You kind of had some idea from what you Googled. But you didn't know people, and so how to handling that uncertainty. And I remember the very first time that we when we moved to Michigan, and I was pregnant with McKinley, and so just Mike and I had just graduated college, and we moved to Michigan for his first job. And I remember going to the grocery store for the first time. And I grew up in Logan, and in Logan, the grocery store, everyone was friends and always would chat with everybody. I'd go with my mom and you'd see all our neighbors. And I remember going to the grocery store for the first time in Michigan, and I asked the lady, I was going down the aisle, and I just asked her excuse me. And I just smiled at her, and she just glared at me. And I came home, and I remember crying because I thought, oh, these people are so mean. But then because of this change and uncertainty, I did what I normal that I do. And the first thing I did was join a gym. And I went to the community center, and I joined the community center. I decided that I should get involved. I started teaching classes there. Then I started working at the community center, and I put on a duathlon in Michigan. And I started making friends, and some of those friends are friends that I'm still in contact with this day. And so I look back at that situation, and I thought, it was so, it did bring some anxiety, and there was a lot of new things, and I'd never been, back east. I grew up in Utah my whole life, but now some of those people that I keep in contact were my best friends, and I'm so thankful for those friendships and that time that I learned to grow and just to be able to meet new people. So it did. So now I can look back and just super thankful for that, even though it did cause some definite anxiety. And so it makes me think uncertainty, while very uncomfortable, it often holds that key to growth. I think of those times in the growth that I was able to see in myself is huge. And it's during those moments that we are forced to trust ourselves and then we lean on others, and we can kind of find clarity in like what truly matters in those moments. So as I've moved a few times, and like that was kind of always the go-to, like, okay, if I don't know what to do, like I'll go join a gym. So and then I'm gonna make friends that way. And so we're gonna kind of talk about some practical ways to handle uncertainty with confidence. I think this is super important. First, as much as you can't control everything, kind of focus on what you can control. So I always knew that like one thing I could control is if I joined a gym or not. Like that was super important for my like mental sanity and like health. And so that was the one thing that I like always did when we moved. Like when we moved to Central Washington, the first thing I did was like join a gym. And then I knew that if I met people there, that they would have like things that they like to do because they were at the gym, and I could find common interest. And so I think that's super important when like life gets unpredictable, is to kind of narrow your focus on like what you can control. And so for me, this is like definitely your routines, like exercise or journaling. Those provide stability in the chaos. And like an example of this, like even the other day, like I get in a routine, like we go to school, and then like even during tennis season, like this is like I coach tennis, and then I go to watch my son play on the weekends. And so recently he made the basketball team, and we went to the parents meeting, and they gave me the schedule, and I've been going to CrossFit at 6 p.m. This has kind of been my thing. This is like my routine. And I remember feeling some of this kind of anxious, like, oh my gosh, my schedule has been like thrown off. Like, how do I like handle this? And I had to sit back for just a second. Like, okay, what can I control? I can control when I go work out. So that's what I'm going to figure out first. And I remember just like, I'm just going to do a workout. And then I was able to like, okay, now I can like pencil all these like dates in, because football you have like one game a week. Basketball we have like 2 or 3 games a week. And so I was like, okay, now this like kind of changes my schedule, and their games are a little bit earlier. And so kind of just like setting that tone and like making sure that I calendar everything. And then once I calendar it, then I'm like, I can control my calendar. Like I can control what I put on my calendar, right? And so helping that kind of just control that anxiety. The second thing I think is super important is kind of lean into flexibility. We have to be flexible because like change happens all the time, and I think sometimes when the anxiety gets more so is when we're not flexible. Like this is what has to happen, and so instead of fighting it, uncertainty, kind of just embrace it. Flexibility isn't just like about being adaptable, but it's being like open to new possibilities and like solutions. And so sometimes like what we think that like would be the best option, maybe it's not the best option. And if you're not open to it, you won't find out that was like the best thing for you or your family. And then come to find out that being open and you try something new, and it actually ends up being a way better time. And just kind of like an example in a like positive thing is this weekend, Bracken and I went to Boston for his birthday weekend. His birthday's in December, but I surprised him with a trip to Boston because he's a diehard Patriots fan and wanted to go to Foxborough. And we landed, and just kind of being like, okay, this is your weekend, like whatever you want to do. And he looked at me and he's like, can we go to the Boston Celtics game? This is kind of, and that's not something that I even like thought of like going. And I said, well, if you can find us tickets, let's like, sure. Like, let's be kind of like that flexibility piece, right? Like, let's just go and like, we'll figure it out. And I am not like the best like navigation. And so kind of gives me a little bit of anxiety, like not figuring out like, okay, we're the rental car and all that stuff. But I was like, we were just going to do it. And so we found these tickets, and we ended up going to this epic game where the Boston Celtics went into overtime, and then Jason Tatum hit this 3-pointer buzzer beater in overtime. And it was like, it literally was epic. And I remember the smile on my son's face is like, we could have not planned that better. And so I think sometimes like those moments where you're flexible, like can turn out to be those core memory moments that you would have never planned or imagined that could have been something that will be something that he remembers for the rest of his life. So the third thing I think, and we've talked about this in the last couple episodes, is practice mindfulness. And I know it keeps coming up, but I think like flexibility, working out, mindfulness, but because uncertainty often, that makes us live in the future. And I like find myself like, that's when I get anxious, right? Like I start thinking about, what next year looks like. And so sometimes I have to like practice that mindfulness and take a step back and just sit, because a lot of times we get so anxious because we're thinking about the what ifs. And by practicing mindfulness and seeing and feeling that like the anxiety that's inside of us, and by taking a step back, a lot of times that pulls us back into the present. And then that can help us back, like, okay, what can I take on right now? Like going back to like, what can I control? Most of this stuff is out of my control. What happens in a year, or my year that I thought from last year looks different than what it actually is, right? But what can I control? I can control like how I am in the present. Am I present with my kids? Did I like even make dinner tonight, right? Like how, like I can control that. I can control the minutes that I sit and deep breathe and like bring myself back to the present and like focus on that. And that kind of helps you keep centered. And the fourth thing is like building a strong support system. And a lot of times you don't have to like face uncertainty alone. We never have to face it alone. You can like share your concerns with like trusted adults, like trusted friends, family, even if a professional. And sometimes just like talking about it, like just lightens your load. Like sometimes you just have to voice your frustrations. A lot of times, sometimes for me, I just have to be like, oh my gosh, I'm just so overwhelmed right now. And I have to just say it out loud. And once I say that I'm overwhelmed and take a deep breath and bring myself back in the presence, then I can handle it. But I just need to tell somebody. I don't need anyone to like do it, because I kind of, a lot of times I have a hard time saying no, if you know me. And so I do get myself into that like feeling. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I kind of said yes to way too many things. But I say yes because I know I can handle it. It's just every once in a while I feel that like overwhelm. And by voicing that, then I like, okay, I got this. And so make sure you have a support system, even like, and that's why journaling too, like sometimes just like writing it down, like, can make you feel better and get through it. So that's kind of like how I rely on it. Sometimes I just have to be like, I just need like to my sister, or, I just need to voice this. And then once I voice it, then I'm good. And so just getting that off my plate. But like even journaling, sometimes just like writing a list. Like I love writing lists, and just writing a list that you can check off is super helpful for me too, to kind of like take off that overwhelm, and going back to like how I can grow in like uncertainty and getting comfortable with the unknown. And I think the third thing, and definitely trusting the process. So this is definitely the hardest lesson I've ever had to learn, is that usually uncertainty often leads us to exactly where we need to be. Even if it doesn't feel like that it in the moment, we are learning to trust the process, whether it's in parenting, a career shift, a fitness journey. It all takes practice, but it's definitely worth it. And I can look back and think, I didn't know I had to go through that. But now, I'm proud of those moments, and I am so grateful for those lessons. And I was thinking the other day was just kind of how even teaching, when I started teaching, I didn't go into teaching. And when my youngest went to kindergarten, and this is our fourth moving back to Utah, I thought, I gotta do something. And so I knew with my degree, my favorite parts was going into the classroom, and I like reflected on like my education experience. And so I went and started applying for jobs, and my first job offer I got was like at Ogden High. And that was crazy because they offered me the job like 3 days before school started, and I was like, okay, here we go. And like, but now I look back, and after like, even like through a divorce and Mike's passing, and then I never had to worry about like financially, in the sense of like, I knew what I was doing, and like even how far I've come in the last like 11 years in teaching and where I'm at now. And like, then I've since got my master's and my admin license. And who thought that like 11 years ago, when I literally was just going in and I wanted to teach health and PE because my background was exercise science and community health, and where like the growth that I have seen in those 11 years, and I would have never guessed. Like, but I also would have never guessed like all these different life experiences would have happened. And because of like taking that leap, and then it kind of helped me through those uncertainty times. It kind of provided structure also to like, okay, and some days like when you're just feeling like all the overwhelm and stuff, then I just know like part of that routine is I got to get up and go to work. And so it kind of helps like that structure. And I think that helps with the uncertainty. And so in conclusion, change and uncertainty are inevitable parts of life, but we need to, they don't need to derail us. By focusing on what we can control, staying flexible and trusting the process, we can navigate these moments with confidence and come stronger on the other side. So thanks for joining me on Life Joy Power. If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might be facing uncertainty right now. Remember, life unknowns are not just challenges, they are opportunities to grow. So see you next time. And in conclusion, in my PS note, my favorite finds for this episode is always finding a grounding app. And the two apps that I really like is Calm or Headspace. And kind of that helps you, like, as I talk through like mindfulness, it can help you have someone else walk you through the process to kind of bring you back. And then the second thing that I love is my favorite person is to read is Brene Brown, and she has a book called The Gift of Imperfections, and it was a huge life changer, game changer for me. And so check that book out. And then the last thing is, I think too, like, if you can always journal prompt. And I think a good journal prompt for when you kind of feel that like uncertainty and change is, what is one thing that I can control today? All right, see you next time.